Hey everybody, Christian from Treasure Town here, and today we're going to be speaking about a really important topic that I think a lot of people are overlooking within the silver stacking community. I made a video sort of sharing some of my feelings on this topic a few weeks ago, and it's been relatively popular. There was a really good comment by Sean Foltz that I think I agree with a fair bit of. We just sort of see eye to eye, and I just wanted to acknowledge him for commenting on that video. But basically, how do you think about when you're going to sell silver? Because it really doesn't make too much sense to just purchase silver, and not really have a coordinated investment thesis in silver, and then think about at which point does it make sense for me to be getting out of this investment, because nobody talks on that. So that's what we'll be talking about today. So again, it might not be super popular because I think, I'm really aligned from an investment perspective. I have a fair amount of silver, certainly way more than anybody that I know in terms of a proportion, in terms of what percent of my so-called investment portfolio is with silver and gold. Now, maybe it might feel like tons of other people, if you're watching a lot of YouTube content, you're looking around saying, hey, like everybody just seems to be pouring their money into silver. Well, I think that if you look around you, that probably doesn't hold true, just in the sense that I think it's really easy for people to get caught up in, with the online world. The algorithm naturally is going to push people to watch more of the content that they seem to enjoy. So that's something that I have to be cognizant of when I'm watching things on YouTube or just clicking around. And I think it even is specifically more of a threat within the silver and gold stacking community, just because I, am part of that. But I think that I watch a lot of the other videos in this space, and there's very few people advocating for anything other than just constantly buying back up the truck on silver. It's going to the moon. It's something that I previously had talked about in that video that Sean commented on, and he was basically saying, at what point are you just a silver hoarder as opposed to a silver stacker or a silver investor? And I think that that's a really good topic. And this is not investment advice, but I'm not making any predictions on the price of silver. I'm just thinking about how, take a step back and how are you approaching the situation? Because if you make an investment, ideally you are going to have that investment, there's some value that's represented in that, and then that value is also going to be evaluated relative to other uses of that money. So maybe the money that you're putting into silver could be used to buy a basket of stocks, whether that's in the US or a global fund. It could be used to purchase bonds. It could be used to purchase a vacation with somebody that you really like, or a nice dinner, a meal, or maybe new decorations for your living space. There's a ton of different, investments or uses of money. And I think that that's really the crux of how you approach silver. So there's a few different things that I want to break down. But when you're looking at silver, and gold is the same way, you should be constantly having that investment thesis going in. And that doesn't mean, I'm not saying sell silver, that it's overvalued. What I am saying though is understand, okay, here's the price of silver, call it, for, just an example that's not super close to where we are today, $50 per ounce. And if all of a sudden that price, when you've purchased silver at $50, that price becomes $100, well then that doesn't necessarily mean that it's time to sell. It depends, you originally may have been a big believer that the true price of silver was going to be $200 an ounce for whatever reasons. So in that case, you want to wait it out until it makes its way up there, or you could consider doing a little bit of profit taking. So, selling a little bit and then holding on to most of it, as it ideally will continue to go up. But if it goes to $100 and you think the true price is $65, you're looking for a sort of a 30% increase, then of course you should sell your silver. One other thing people really don't consider is that effectively by holding something like silver, it's like Bitcoin or gold, again, a physical asset. It does not have cash flow. So that's a really important part. You're just holding it and ideally selling it to the next person who's going to buy it for a certain price and linked to its precious metal value. So every day that you hold your silver, you're effectively agreeing that you feel like the price should be higher, because if silver is $25, you think it should be, trading around 12. It really makes sense to sell a fair amount of what you have, unless maybe you've already done that, at which point maybe you're holding on a little bit, sort of on the other end, say as like a de-risking idea. But there are some considerations like the physical cost of you going to a bullion dealer to sell that silver. Maybe there's like a 10% difference. So if, again, going back to the $50 example, if the price is 45 and you think that you're going to take a $5 an ounce loss, then, obviously maybe it's not worth going to the bullion dealer. But you always want to be thinking about your personal price of silver, have a price target, and keep in mind in terms of how you are stacking. Now, for some people, they say, I really don't care what the value of silver and gold is relative to other things. I think that can be actually reasonable for some people. Maybe they're thinking about this is something I can pass down or use in physical transactions that certain people will accept. And that sort of gets onto a whole different axis where you're sort of thinking you're still caring about the value, but the value that you derive is in a much different situation compared to, understanding from the classic sort of here's how it works relative to other things. Maybe you feel you're a real big believer in using this stuff for physical trades. Now, may be complicated with tax laws. I'm not going to really get into any of that sort of thing because gold and silver are not considered legal tender. So there are some implications just if we're going fully by the books. But the other thing to think about is not in a full counter to my last example, but sometimes say you start out at a $50 an ounce price. That's where you own your silver at. You think the true price is $100. Well, if the price goes to $100 and even to $200, maybe you should consider selling, but you should also sort of always update your investment thesis. So maybe something has happened where interest rates are now negative 10%. I mean, that's a crazy example, but I would imagine that with interest rates that low, it would be phenomenal for assets like gold and silver and Bitcoin. So at that point, maybe all of a sudden that $200 an ounce, far upper range, it's like, hey, we're there, but the major factors that contribute to the price of silver now make it a reasonable thing to hold on to. Same thing, say I'm not really a huge expert in terms of some of the electric vehicles use and just some of the new hybrid power transition, that goes on a fair amount. I think that there can be some links to silver, but it's also something where, since it is such a hot button topic, often people will sort of align themselves with the hot button topic so that they can profit off of it. So that's just, again, I'm not making a prediction either way. But what I am saying is that personally, I own a fair amount of it, but there's also a price at which I'd be willing to sell. And I don't have a specific one to really throw out for the camera, but I think that if it reached that price, I would consider, well, what has changed? Why has it reached the price? Not just looking at it as here's the amount of money that the amount of US dollars I could get. Maybe the dollar really continues to strengthen, at which point silver is probably going to get relatively cheaper. If it really, really weakens, if there is actually a hyperinflationary environment, all of a sudden maybe that price target doesn't make much sense anymore. It can be a little bit easy, now I'm coming back like the third angle, I've been have the thesis, then you can reevaluate the thesis. The last thing is don't be super biased. So just because some people are, maybe there's like a retail movement just because they're going to push the price of silver up or something, just because the price is going up doesn't necessarily mean you need to reevaluate your thesis. If other people are catching on to what you believe to be the case, that doesn't mean that tons and tons of more people will. So just something to think about. I always like to sort of talk in these sorts of videos, but consider really, and also again, I think that purposes mentality, in what situations are you using silver? Because I think it is a mistake just to say, it's shiny and I like seeing it sit there. I mean, I'm not that sure about something like nickel bullion, but I'm sure that would be a lot, cheaper if you just want to have a stack of something. Or I doubt that there's any reason to produce aluminum bullion, but I bet you could purchase some of that as well if you want some really cool backgrounds. Like I have this monster box, green monster box, should be I think 500 American Silver Eagles in there. I got it empty, so it is a cool prop. But maybe if you need some props, then and you just want something that looks to have that gray metallic color, at that point, maybe silver's for you and you don't have to think about the price, but there's some cheaper ways to do it, and then maybe you could invest in something like a nice vacation or experience with friends or family. So anyways, see you on some of my other videos. Again, how do I think about it? I've got some silver in my portfolio, certainly more than the average person does, but always enjoy reading the comments and seeing if any of them stand out to me or are interesting, and figure that one was worth bringing up to you all today. Thanks for watching the video. I'd encourage you to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel to stay updated. I've also got Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, so you can follow me there. TreasuretownYT.com is the main channel website. Definitely give that a visit. I've got a lot of information about me up there and the channel. CoinGrabBag.com as well currently redirects there, but it's some good opportunities for very fair grab bags, both made by me and other sellers. A lot of different options, so that's a good way to support. There's also TreasureTownCoins.com. In the future, my coin dealing operation will be done out of that website. CoinMeltPrice.com for updates on the melt prices of your coins, both US and world. A lot of resources in that website. And then CoinsMetalsCards.com, being developed right now as a marketplace and news source for coins, metals, cards, and collectibles in general. So I'll see you on my future videos. Looking forward to seeing you there, and hope you have a good day.